Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to speak this afternoon about vehicle automation in Pennsylvania. My name is Roger Cohen. I'm the Policy Director at PennDOT, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. I'm also co-chair of the Pennsylvania Autonomous Vehicle Policy Task Force. To my right, whom you will also be hearing from, the Secretary of Transportation in Pennsylvania, Leslie Richards. To my left, you'll be hearing from Kurt Myers, the Deputy Secretary, Head of Driver and Vehicle Services at PennDOT, as well as co-chair of the AV Policy Task Force. Further to my left, Jason Sharp, the Acting Chief Counsel at PennDOT. Across at the table across from us, you'll be hearing from Kara Templeton, who is the Director of Driver Licensing at PennDOT, Steve DeTore, the Policy Director at the Department of Community and Economic Development, Mark Kopko, who is the Head of Advanced Driver and Traffic Technologies, and Alexis Campbell will be from Driver and Vehicle Services will also be assisting us. Before we begin, we would like you to take a look at the forthcoming video, which is going to tell you a lot about vehicle automation in Pennsylvania.
Transportation officials, advocates, companies, and users around the world are talking about how automated vehicles will change transportation as we know it. But what exactly are automated vehicles? There are two types of automated vehicles: autonomous vehicles, or AV, and connected automated vehicles, or CAV. An autonomous vehicle is a vehicle that relies entirely on its own onboard sensors for exercising vehicle control functions and maintaining situational awareness. A connected automated vehicle is an automated vehicle that has capabilities that allow it to be aware of other equipped vehicles in their immediate vicinity. It is also aware of the specific features of the surrounding infrastructure, such as intersections and curves. There are quite a few advantages to automated technologies. Safety. Driver actions account for more than 90% of motor vehicle crashes nationwide. Automated technologies minimize and can potentially remove human error behind the wheel, resulting in fewer crashes and fatalities. Mobility. Automated vehicle technology could result in greater efficiency and a dramatic reduction in congestion without the need for capacity. In Pennsylvania, congestion results in more than 264 million hours of delay each year. Land use. In an automated future, a vehicle could drop off one person, then pick up someone else, and be in almost constant use. That's unlike our current vehicles that sit idle for an average of 22 hours a day. In fact, some parking lots and garages could eventually be repurposed into green space. And society. Mature drivers and people with disabilities will be able to enjoy new transportation options and independence. In Pennsylvania alone, there are over 950,000 disabled citizens. Autonomous vehicles are split into 6 levels of automation, as defined by the Society of Automotive Engineers. 0, no automation. 1, driver assistance. 2, partial automation. 3, conditional automation. 4, high automation. And 5, full automation. Humans are responsible for motoring the vehicle and performing most functions in levels 1 and 2, while an automated driving system performs all functions in levels 3, 4, and 5. Vehicles in levels 3 and up are considered highly automated vehicles. As vehicles progress to higher levels of automation, less responsibility is put on the driver for monitoring the vehicle. Here's how an automated vehicle works. Several systems work in conjunction with each other to control an automated vehicle. Radar sensors dotted around the car monitor the position of vehicles nearby. Video cameras detect traffic lights, read road signs, and keep track of other vehicles, while also looking out for pedestrians and other obstacles. Light detection and ranging sensors, that is, LIDAR sensors, help to detect the edges of roads and identify lane markings by bouncing pulses of light off the car's surroundings. Ultrasonic sensors in the wheels can detect the position of curbs and other vehicles when parking. Finally, a central computer analyzes all the data from the various sensors to manipulate the steering, acceleration, and braking. Here's how connected technologies work. Connected vehicles are vehicles that use many different communication technologies to communicate with the driver, with other cars on the road, that is, vehicle-to-vehicle or V2V with roadside infrastructure, vehicle-to-infrastructure or V2I, and with the cloud. This technology can be used to not only improve vehicle safety, but also to improve vehicle efficiency and commute times. With these technologies entering the transportation landscape, many stakeholders are looking at how to prepare. Pennsylvania and PennDOT, the State Department of Transportation, have been established as leaders in the realm of automated vehicles. The Pennsylvania Department of Transportation established the Pennsylvania Autonomous Vehicle Policy Task Force in June of 2016. The task force consists of government, academia, advocacy, and industry representatives. After several meetings and reviewing standards and feedback, the task force shared its final recommended testing guidance in December 2016. PennDOT and other task force members will continue to work with officials at all levels as guidance from policy and relevant legislation are implemented.
The future is bright, and it's very bright here in Pennsylvania. And we are intent on playing a major role in moving this very innovative technology forward.
These technologies will impact mobility not just in Pennsylvania, but also across the globe. We all have a role in preparing our communities for these monumental developments, and we welcome you to join us for this world-changing transportation evolution.
As I think the video suggests, we're in the midst of a transformative change in technology and in how transportation is done. And Professor Raj Rajkumar, who was in that video at the wheel of the autonomous vehicle that you saw in the video and is one of the world's leading authorities on this technology, has called this a once-in-100 years opportunity. And the question he's posed for us in Pennsylvania is, what are we going to do about that? So today's discussion is going to not just address what vehicle automation is all about, but also what we're doing at PennDOT and at DCED and elsewhere in the Commonwealth, and what's coming up next. And to begin that discussion, it's a pleasure to turn the microphone over to Leslie Richards, the Secretary of Transportation. And I remind you that you can also, while we're doing this, you can send in your questions and comments to pen.av@pa.gov. Secretary Richards.
Thank you, Roger. We're happy to be here today and to continue this discussion. As you saw in the video, there are many reasons why we want to support this emerging technology. I cannot highlight enough, though, the safety benefits. I truly believe that not since, the use of the seatbelt, airbags, have we had an opportunity to improve safety, not just here in Pennsylvania, but throughout the nation and throughout the world. When the video mentioned that 90% of national accidents are attributed to human distraction, here in Pennsylvania, our numbers are a little higher at 94% of all accidents. And if we can significantly reduce that number and reduce the number of fatalities as well as serious accidents, it is something we are very much looking forward to embracing and advancing here in Pennsylvania. Now, there are a lot of unknowns, and that's why discussions like today are very important. But the one thing we do know is that transportation is going to look very different than it does today. And we know that AV and CAV are going to play a very, very big part. In Pennsylvania, we're very proud that we are national leaders, and I would say world leaders. We have world-class research institutions. I know the video showed what's going on at CMU. We have other large academic institutions such as Penn State and the University of Pennsylvania that are very involved in developing this technology. We have leading technical and tech innovators here who have chosen to locate in Pennsylvania. They could have set up shop anywhere else, but we're very happy to have them here. And of course, Pittsburgh is just a wonderful success story where we see the world's attention, where we are looking at it, and we're just so happy, again, to be supporting those private and public businesses in helping this technology mature. And of course, a key part to this is public engagement and hearing how the public feels about it, what they need and expect from it, and also to hear their concerns so that we can address them effectively. In PennDOT, our goal, as is in every state, is we want to promote this innovation. We want to allow it to mature, but we also want to make sure that it does so with safety in mind. So it's always balancing that safety with the technology development. And so this conversation will give you an insight of where we are now and where we're going. And obviously, the more you're engaged, the better we'll be able to help everybody with mobility options and safe travel. With that, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Kurt Myers, who's going to discuss how HAV will change things, things that you will see in the transportation world.
Thank you, Secretary Richards. When it comes to halves, the fact of the matter is that there's been a great deal of discussion as to why we should embrace this technology. And I'd like to reference just a couple of points. First of all, the department is very, very proud of the fact that in 2016, we had the lowest number of reported fatalities since 1928, since records have been being kept. 1,188 individuals lost their lives on our highways, but as we would all agree, one life is one too many. And certainly we want to see that number driven down even further than what it is in 2016. We know that automated vehicles offer that opportunity to be able to reduce fatalities, reduce crashes. Because of the technology that is available in these vehicles, we know that we will see a reduction over time. In addition to that, we know that in 2016, we estimate that 264 million annual hours of delay, sitting in congestion, sitting in traffic, that will be helped and eliminated by automated vehicles. And certainly with those vehicles sitting in that traffic, not only you as an individual have lost your valuable time, but also you're burning fuel. We estimate 133 million gallons of fuel are wasted annually in congestion. We also know that we have an aging population here in Pennsylvania. We have an estimated 950,000 individuals that have some physical disability. In some of those cases, those individuals today are not able to drive, and some in the future won't be able to operate a motor vehicle by themselves. And we also know that 769,000 licensed drivers today are over the age of 75. Now, I want to be clear, as the person responsible for driver licensing, that age is not in and of itself the only reason somebody may not be able to drive. There are many excellent drivers who are older, and the fact of the matter is that usually what impacts the individual is a medical condition or a physical disability that impacts their ability to be able to drive. Today, when someone is reported to the department, it's a mandatory law in Pennsylvania that if they're unable to drive based upon their doctor's recommendation, we then in those situations are required to take the individual's driver's license away. It's not something we want to do, but we need to do for the safety of not only that individual, but also the other individuals that are driving around them. But frankly, in today's environment, I really don't have a lot of choices for that individual. I can tell them to rely on a friend, or rely on a family member, or to take public transportation. But the one fundamental underlying issue there is that we've taken away their freedom. And by taking away their freedom to go and come when they want, we've also taken away a certain degree of their quality of life. So for all the reasons that I've mentioned above, reducing fatalities, reducing crashes, reducing congestion, and giving opportunity to those who may not be able to operate an automobile today, halves have the potential to really make a difference for the citizens of the Commonwealth, the citizens of the United States, and for that matter, throughout the world. Now, from the standpoint of some of the areas that we've discussed already, safety, independence for disabled and older and non-licensed drivers, congestion reduction, more efficient use of our infrastructure, redirecting traffic enforcement, and energy savings. The fact is that we believe, and as you saw in the video, we fully expect that the average vehicle today is used 2 hours a day and sits for 22 hours. We fully expect that to be turned upside down, if you will. We expect that vehicles will be used for 22 hours a day and sit for 2 hours. We may have situations where multiple individuals own vehicles as opposed to one individual, obviously having an impact on congestion as well. All of these factors make the future of HAVs something that has the great potential to really improve the opportunities for not only the individual, but also for the Commonwealth as a whole. There are challenges, and we certainly recognize the fact that there are challenges associated with HAVs. The public acceptance, the safe testing and development, it was already mentioned. Obviously, our focus at PennDOT is on safety, and so we're very concerned about that. We also understand that these vehicles will have to work well with vehicles in the near future and into the long-term future, those vehicles that are automated and those vehicles that are still driven by humans. The transition period will be a long period of time. But the fact of the matter is, while these challenges exist, we know that in the end, through the development of this technology, those challenges will be overcome. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when that occurs from the standpoint of the development of the technology. Finally, I just want to mention that, as it was noted before, that it takes a lot of stakeholders to make all of this happen. And the fact is that we have done a tremendous amount of outreach to ensure that we get as many stakeholders involved in the discussions to get their perspective, their opinions. And we've encouraged organizations, and as you can see here, there's a long list of organizations that are involved with us in helping us work through the testing and then ultimately the deployment of automated vehicles here in Pennsylvania. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Sharp. Jason?
Thank you, Kurt. Right now, in Pennsylvania, regarding the legal status of operation and testing of highly automated vehicles, we view it, what we call it's legal but limited. The vehicle code in Pennsylvania, as in many other states, is a collection of laws that were passed, some of them 30, 40, 50 years ago, certainly without an eye to this groundbreaking, revolutionary technology. While there's not a specific section or site in the vehicle code that discusses automated vehicles, a reasonable reading of the vehicle code leads us to the understanding that the law anticipates that a person is behind the wheel of a vehicle when it's on the road in Pennsylvania. Thus, right now, testing that occurs normally occurs by, particularly in the Pittsburgh region, testing entities who do have a person behind the wheel. Often they have a person in the passenger seat. They're monitoring the vehicle and they are watching what the vehicle's doing, and they're ready to take control. Obviously, to move to the levels of automation that we talked about in the video, those level 4s or 5s, where a human person is neither expected to take control of the vehicle at any time or, for that matter, even be in the vehicle, there will be some changes to the law that are necessary to achieve that. Some of the steps that have been taken there so far, there are pending bills in the Pennsylvania General Assembly. There's Senate Bill 427 and House Bill 1637. These bills are generally define what HAVs are and talk about expanding their testing on public roads in Pennsylvania, allowing oversight by PennDOT and the Pennsylvania Turnpike where appropriate. Certainly those are pending out there. They may be changed or amended as they move through the legislative process. I would want to point out one recent success in regard to these automated vehicles, House Bill 958. That was introduced by Representative Rothman. It deals with platooning vehicles and work zone vehicles, and that has now been reported out of its committee and will be considered on the floor of the House next week. This would allow the operation of truck platoons. These are connected automated vehicles with a driver in a lead vehicle that's connected to one or two vehicles behind it. The purpose of a platoon would be to allow them to ride in conjunction with each other, draft, and get fuel and energy savings. The automated work zone vehicle, which this bill would authorize, it's a real-life vehicle that's used right now in PennDOT work zones, and there is a driver in that vehicle right now. You may have seen it on the road when you drive. It's usually at the end of a work zone. Essentially, it's a crash truck that an errant vehicle is meant to drive into. Right now, both on PennDOT roads and on the Turnpike, there's a human being, there's a driver in that vehicle. This bill would allow us to take that driver out, let the automated vehicle system drive that vehicle, and increase safety on the road and take those people out of harm's way. With that, I want to turn it over to Kara Templeton to give an overview of what the federal government is doing in regard to HAVs.
Thanks, Jason. Now that you've heard the legislative initiatives in Pennsylvania, I'd like to share with you the policy and legislative work that is happening at the federal level. In September 2016, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, otherwise known as NHTSA, released an initial federal automated vehicle policy to provide guidance to manufacturers, technology companies, the states, and other industry stakeholders pertaining to highly automated vehicles. This thorough document was over 100 pages, and it was focused on 4 different areas. Those areas included vehicle performance guidance for automated vehicles, model state policy, NHTSA's current regulatory tools, and also a discussion of possible new regulatory tools that could be used by NHTSA pertaining to governing automated vehicles. The Vehicle Performance Guidance section outlined best practices for the safe pre-deployment, design, development, and testing of highly automated vehicles prior to commercial sale or operation on our public roadways. The guidance set United States Department of Transportation's expectation of industry by providing reasonable practices and procedures that manufacturers, suppliers, and other entities should follow in the immediate short term to test and deploy highly automated vehicles. Introduced in this section was a voluntary 15-point safety assessment. Voluntary, it's a key word there, that these entities should complete in relation to the development and use of highly automated vehicles. The second section, dealing with model state policy, gave guidance to the jurisdictions. State governments play a very important role in facilitating highly automated vehicles, ensuring they're safely deployed, and promoting their life-saving benefits. The model state policy confirms that states retain their traditional responsibilities for vehicle licensing and registration, traffic laws and enforcement, motor vehicle insurance, and liability regimes. Since 2014, DOT has partnered with American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators to explore highly automated vehicle policies. And this collaboration was an important part of putting together the model state policy in the NHTSA guidance document. The third section, which is NHTSA's current regulatory tools, in the initial policy document, NHTSA discussed its current tools and the authority that it would use to govern the development, testing, and deployment of automated vehicles. NHTSA has the authority to identify safety defects, which allows then that agency to recall vehicles or equipment that pose an unreasonable risk to safety, even when there's no applicable federal motor vehicle safety standard. And also, the fourth and final section of that initial policy talked about new tools that NHTSA could potentially use to help it in the future in terms of governing highly automated vehicles. The United States Senate introduced the American Vision for Safer Transportation through Advancement of Revolutionary Technology Act. That's a lot of words. It's more commonly referred to as the AV START Act, and that happened in September 2017. The bill details requirements for the submission of a mandatory safety evaluation report to be submitted to the Secretary of Transportation for the U.S. Department of Transportation. Additionally, the bill language includes preemptive language to further define federal and state roles. The language states that no state or political subdivision of a state may adopt, maintain, enforce, prescribe, or continue in effect any law or regulation regarding the design, construction, or performance of highly automated vehicles, automated driving systems, or components of automated driving systems, unless the law or regulation is identical to what is proposed in the federal bill. Other notable characteristics about the Senate bill include the definition of a highly automated vehicle, which currently caps the gross vehicle weight at 10,000 pounds or less. This language would currently exclude large commercial motor vehicles as applicable to the AV START Act. This bill includes provisions regarding licensing, specifically that a state may not issue a motor vehicle operator's license for the operation or use of a highly automated vehicle in a manner that would discriminate on the basis of disability. Exemptions from the federal motor vehicle safety standards have been expanded through this bill. For highly automated vehicles, the United States Department of Transportation may grant exemptions of up to 50,000 vehicles to be sold or introduced in interstate commerce in the first 12-month period following enactment. That would increase to 75,000 vehicles in the second year and then 100,000 vehicles in the third and subsequent years. The bill also establishes a highly automated vehicles technical safety committee, and it addresses cybersecurity requirements. Okay, also in September 2017, the United States House passed the Safely Ensuring Licensed Future Deployment and Research in Vehicle Evolution Act, better known as the Self-Drive Act. The bill references or reinforces traditional state authority regarding road and vehicle management. The law does make it clear that federal government is in charge of vehicle standards, including automated vehicles. It forbids state and local governments from having in any way, shape, or form a law pertaining in any direct way to driving systems or highly automated vehicles, which is different from the language that is contained in that federal bill. Similar to the Senate bill, the House bill also includes expanded exemptions from the federal motor vehicle safety standards until updated standards are in place. Also similar to the Senate bill, the Self-Drive Act establishes an advisory committee. It does not address large commercial vehicles, and it also includes cybersecurity requirements. In September 2017, NHTSA released its updated policy called A Vision for Safety, which serves as the new and current federal automated vehicle policy version known as version 2.0. A Vision for Safety 2.0 builds on the previous policy and incorporates feedback received through public comments of the initial policy and congressional hearings. Version 2.0 paves the way for the safe deployment of advanced driver assistance technologies by providing voluntary guidance for practices and prioritize safety. The document also provides technical assistance to the states and best practices for policymakers. The document is consistent with the initial policy, however, it is significantly shorter and much more refined. It's intended to be flexible and evolve as technology does. And in fact, U.S. Department of Transportation and NHTSA are currently working on a version 3.0. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Diatori to share information as it pertains to economic benefits that can be achieved through advancement and innovation related to highly automated vehicles. Steve.
Thank you, Kara. Good afternoon. At DCED, we see autonomous vehicles as not only a transportation issue, but also as a driver of economic development that can help Pennsylvania's communities thrive. Many of DCED's stakeholders have or will soon have a direct interest in AVs. These groups include local government officials and associations, economic development organizations, workforce development groups, academic institutions, and others. AV technology allows DCED to utilize our work and experience in business development, community planning, and workforce training. Pennsylvania has a long and accomplished history of being witness to innovative breakthroughs, from Benjamin Franklin to Jonas Salk to gas stations, movie theaters, the Declaration of Independence, and now automated vehicles, countless leading minds and innovative discoveries that led to societal change happened and are happening in Pennsylvania. These examples all point to one central theme: Pennsylvanians are innovators. For today's purposes, I'm going to focus on workforce, economic, and community development. So let's begin with workforce development. According to multiple sources, including the job-seeking site Indeed.com, the average salary for a self-driving car engineer ranges from $88,000 to $223,000 a year. These are high-paying jobs for highly skilled professionals, many of whom are graduates or current students of Pennsylvania's colleges, universities, trade schools, and community colleges. And we want those leaders of tomorrow to remain in Pennsylvania. In a 2014 Pittsburgh Post-Gazette article, Mayor Peduto compared Carnegie Mellon and the University of Pittsburgh to the iron ore factories that made Pittsburgh an industrial power in the 19th century. He said, "The schools are the local resource, churning out that talent from which the city is fueled." It should be noted that this economic shift will not be without its bumps. Through its workforce development programs and partnerships, DCD and its sister agencies support worker training that allows for current and future employees to receive necessary training, resulting in higher pay and promotions while benefiting the employer with a highly skilled workforce. Moving along to economic development, as with any new industry establishing roots in a region, success causes others to follow. Autonomous vehicle technology and its ties to Pennsylvania offers the state a unique opportunity to serve as a nexus between the industry and the world. Pennsylvania's strategic northeast location offers prime access for global companies to top U.S. and global markets. Uber, Argo, Aptiv, Royal Trucking, and Volvo are among companies developing AV technology in Pennsylvania. Tech companies currently thriving and investing in Pennsylvania include Amazon, Google, Comcast, Duolingo, Apple, and Facebook, among others. Pennsylvania saw several of its regions submit Amazon HQ2 bids and was one of only 2 states to have multiple cities be among Amazon's 20 finalists. The state welcomes new technologies and has many programs to facilitate that environment to spur economic development, create jobs, and increase investment in the state. These investments are not just financial, but also communal in that they help build up neighborhoods and hire Pennsylvania talent for open positions. Local economies have benefited from cutting-edge technologies, finding homes in areas of the state in need of repurposing, including retired coal-fired power plants and brownfields. For example, the National Robotics Engineering Center was developed on an abandoned foundry in Lawrenceville. Bridging the connection between economic development and local benefits, I'll conclude by talking about the impact autonomous vehicle technology will have and is having in local communities. CMU professor Red Whitaker recently told the New York Times about locating the school's aforementioned National Robotics Engineering Center in Lawrenceville. He said, "Lawrenceville was in the lost and found. It was really rough." He went on to say that the introduction of a state-of-the-art research facility and its educated workforce was a catalyst and galvanizing influence for the neighborhood. The real estate and the culture of the neighborhood was a very big thing for robotics, and robotics was a very big thing for the neighborhood. That statement speaks to the impact an innovative technology can have on a distressed community in need of a spark. The leadership of local governments is as equally important to building that success as the commercial side. AV technology will help boost local communities through improved transportation and senior services, leading to enhanced mobility, employment, and quality of life. In developing AVs and their eventual rollout, it is essential that attention be consistent across the state. Parts of rural Pennsylvania didn't have phone lines until the 1940s. We can't take the same approach with AVs. Rural areas need to get this technology right because in many ways they are more dependent on vehicles than those in the cities. We need to keep these 3 prongs, workforce, economic, and community development, in mind as we strive for the success of the automated vehicle industry in Pennsylvania. I'll now turn it over to Mark Kopko, PennDOT's Manager of Advanced Vehicle Technology.
Thank you, Steve. So as Steve mentioned, technology is progressing in Pennsylvania, but it's also progressing across the United States and the rest of the world. As this technology advances, we start to see more timelines coming out from the industry. And looking out into the future, in the next 18 years, basically every major automotive manufacturer is looking to have a production vehicle actually hit the roadway and start being available for public use. So we're looking at a technology that was once limited to the pages of science fiction and the minds of engineers, now slowly becoming a reality here in the near future, sooner than a lot of people actually anticipated. So it raises the question of what is PennDOT doing and what is Pennsylvania doing? So to start, we are working on a statewide strategic plan. This is designed to be the foundation for a lot of our actions here in the department. And knowing that technology is constantly changing and evolving, it's designed to be a living document so we can adapt those changes and keep moving forward with our business processes. We also don't want to recreate anything that's existing right now. We don't want to recreate the wheel. So we're going to expand upon existing research and to build upon that, looking at Pennsylvania. We want to make sure that we're offering actionable information so that not only the department, but other entities in the department or within the Commonwealth can take that information and actually incorporate it into their business processes. So as part of this, we're looking at both near-term and long-term recommendations for 9 business areas that not only work for PennDOT, but are for other agencies that they can pull it out, anywhere from IT and security to public outreach to design and construction. So this strategic plan will look at this and come up with some recommendations moving forward that we can build off of and build our policies and our procedures and our best practices from. PennDOT has also partnered with entities in Ohio and Michigan to create the first of its kind Smart Belt Coalition. It's a coalition specifically focusing on technologies such as connected and automated vehicles. So we have the 3 DOTs, the 2 major toll authorities. We have academic institutions such as CMU, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. We also have research entities such as the Transportation Research Center and American Center for Mobility in Michigan. Currently, there's testing going on throughout the country, and it's great that technology is being tested in sunny California and Phoenix and Austin, but those aren't reflective of what the roadway conditions are across the United States. And that's why it's important that you're testing in areas such as Pennsylvania. We have 4 distinct seasons. We have distinct rural and urban environments. We have multi-jurisdictions across everywhere through our states. You know, we have roads that are aging, we have tunnels, we have bridges, we have urban canyons, we have dead zones. So there's a lot of things that we have in Pennsylvania that are reflective of the rest of the country. So it's important to actually come and test here. So with that coalition, we're having 3 main focuses. Freight movement, which is important to everyone, getting our goods timely and safely from A to B. Work zones, which is important to the department and our staff. And traffic incident management. How is this going to function in an environment where an accident might occur or there might be an incident, a hazmat issue, or whatever it might be? How will these vehicles actually function in those type of environments? So those are the main focuses right now of the coalition. Pennsylvania is also lucky to be one of the 10 locations named to be an automated vehicle proving grounds by US DOT. It's an actual partnership of the City of Pittsburgh, the Penn State Larson's Transportation Institute, with partnerships with both PennDOT and Carnegie Mellon University. So these proving grounds are institutions that are designed to help and aid the advancement of this technology in a safe and efficient manner. Our proving ground is unique in the fact that it incorporates both city streets, closed track test tracks, and also interstate systems. So right now, PennDOT is working with all the entities involved with this and progressing and trying to figure out how this actually ties into the bigger picture and how this will align with the initiatives of US DOT. And finally, PennDOT has partnered with Penn State Harrisburg here in Middletown to deploy the first autonomous low-speed shuttle in Pennsylvania. This loop will go around the campus and it will allow an opportunity for both the academic professors at Penn State to research the technology along with their students, but also for the department to pilot the program on a private roadway, find out best practices, and learn about this technology in a safe environment. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Roger Cohen.
Thank you, Mark. In the course of the activities that Mark and Kara, Jason, Kurt, and Steve have described, Pennsylvania has taken a leadership role in the development and advancement of this technology, and increasingly we've received recognition of our efforts both nationally and internationally that reinforces our position of leadership. Some of those are the work we've done that Kara Templeton referred to with the AMVA, the American Association of motor vehicle agencies, their Autonomous Vehicle Best Practices Working Group, which directly informed the NHTSA policy that Kara referred to. We've had peer exchanges from leading officials from both Australia and China who've come to the United States seeking the best, most current information and have sought to speak with Pennsylvania officials, some of them in this room, to find out what's going on here and what are the lessons learned that they can adapt and adopt to their jurisdictions. The I-95 Corridor Coalition, which encompasses all of the states of the Eastern Seaboard, is putting together a CAV, Connected and Autonomous Vehicle Working Group, and Pennsylvania has the honor of being the chair of that, and that's just getting underway and is expected to develop a work plan for the entire East Coast that can be developed. And most recently, we've collaborated with the Department of Transportation of Rhode Island, RIDOT, to develop a plan for looking at assessing what are the best strategies for developing our workforce in preparation for the challenges of new technology, transportation technology in the future, so that we can ensure that our workforce is in a state of readiness as the demand for these new skills comes on. Mark mentioned the Smart Belt Coalition, which I won't repeat, but all of these activities, in sum, have led to some very prominent recognition. Most recently, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, that's the National Organization of State Departments of Transportation, awarded this group here their 2017 President's Award for Performance Excellence for the work that has been done on automated vehicle policy. And also recently, the Government Accounting Office, which is one of the world's leading agencies and entities doing review and recommendations, and they report directly to Congress, spoke to and recognized Pennsylvania's efforts, and we were the only State Department of Transportation that was included in that report. So the question now is, where are we going directly on from here? And our next steps as we look forward is to promote, advance, and shape the legislation that Jason Sharp referred to in the Pennsylvania State House, so that we can create the legal framework for these initiatives to proceed. Additionally, our task force continues to meet. A year ago, as the video reflected, we put together recommended policies that were presented and have been used as a model for other states. Now we're breaking down into subcommittees that are going to deal with things like public outreach, engagement and education, workforce training, and also what local governments need to proceed into the future. We're looking to continue to accelerate the projects you've heard referred to, as well as the collaborations we've tried to foster, and we are going to continue to promote citizen engagement. Most particularly, we have had a summit in State College in September. It was convened by PennDOT and DCED, and you can actually see and read the proceedings of that summit at on the website paavsummit.org. And we're planning actively for our next summit, which will be next April, 9th and 10th in Pittsburgh. And registration is, I believe, open for that. And I suggest you get on with it, because early bird registration at a discount is going to end later this month. So with that, I'm going to ask Alexis if any questions have come in, and we will attempt to give them an answer.
There are a few questions. So the first question is from Jen. I think this is probably a Mark question. Is the technology in these vehicles capable of detecting a cyclist? And if it does detect a cyclist, is the technology intelligent enough at this point to also detect and respond to the cyclist?
Yes, the technology can detect cyclists. In fact, current research has indicated that it detects it better than a human driver. One of the things we like to point out in Pittsburgh, the bicycle advocacy group, Bike PGH, did a public survey looking at how their members react with the vehicles currently testing on public roadways in Pittsburgh. And they find them to be more favorable than actually human-controlled vehicles currently.
Thanks. This next question is from Pete. Will HAVs operate as well in rural areas as they do in cities and on interstates, including drastic road condition changes? Do they use information transfer, i.e. Wi-Fi or satellite? And if so, what happens in blackout areas? This is also you, I think.
So currently, most automated vehicles being tested are designed to function in more urban environments or limited access roadways such as interstates. Eventually, the goal is that it will be seamless. So it doesn't matter if you're on a downtown in the middle of a city or you're on a gravel road in a rural environment, it should function the same way. Vehicles differ based off of manufacturer on how they actually communicate back and forth. A lot of vehicles will have satellite uplinks. Tesla, you currently see that with their vehicles right now, that they have communications that way. You will always have the issue of urban canyons where you might lose connectivity, whether it be GPS or a cellular connection. To address those, a lot of automated vehicles are trying to put the actual computing in the vehicle so that it doesn't need as much outside communication. And in areas where you do need that, that's where a lot of things from a lot of manufacturers are looking at vehicle to infrastructure communications, where as a department, we can start to identify safety critical areas such as signalized intersections, where it's important that the vehicle always has communication with an infrastructure piece of equipment. So eventually we'll get there, but right now it's still in the early phases of testing to get it to where it's in all environments, both urban and rural.
Alexis, if I may add, Governor Wolf has identified the gaps in economic opportunity between rural and suburban and urban areas of the Commonwealth as an important priority, and we are mindful of that as we address automated vehicle policies and how the technologies can affect populations throughout the Commonwealth. It's one of the goals of the summit, in fact, to engage local, community, and regional planners from across the Commonwealth, and particularly we're anxious to hear when we do meet in Pittsburgh in early April, to hear from planners from rural communities how they envision this technology being useful or, in fact, being challenging in those environments. And so we can set to work to try to address those concerns and make the best of our opportunities to bring this technology's benefits to everybody across the Commonwealth.
Great, thank you. We have another question here from Ethan. He asks, will local municipal government be able to restrict certain roads or neighborhoods from automated vehicles using them as a cut-through to avoid traffic or congestion?
Well, there's nothing right now that in the law that would prevent a local municipality from doing that. That's a question more generally for traffic. It wouldn't be something you would specifically look to HAVs for. They currently don't have the power to do that, nor are we aware of any initiative or legislation that would permit that. That probably falls into a larger question of, can a local municipality restrict traffic generally because a certain class of traffic is moving through their municipality in a certain way? It really doesn't matter that it's an HAV or not. That's a question we see right now often with navigational apps, where a navigational app will tell you it's busy on the interstate today, take this local roadway. Generally, that's not something that's reserved to local municipalities, only in limited ways where there are posted roads with, say, weight restriction and things of that nature. So it wouldn't be something you look at in general, specifically to HAVs. That's more of a general question about vehicle movements for all vehicles.
And this is a question from Julie. She says, according to the figures cited by Secretary Richards, 4% of crashes are not attributable to human error. Thus, HAVs would also be unable to avoid most of these crashes. In this case, how is damage liability determined? Is it the manufacturer of the HAV or the owner of the HAV who is held responsible? Is PennDOT working with insurers to establish policies in this area?
The Department of Insurance is one of the members of our task force, and we have worked with them. This is one of the unknown issues of liability moving forward. In regard to that 4%, when we talk about general vehicle crashes, that 4% that isn't attributable to a human error, if that is let's say, for example, if that's a vehicle malfunction or a product liability, current law would account for that through a products liability or other type of tort suit. There are some commentators who believe that highly automated vehicle liability will flow very similar to vehicle liability as it operates today. There are discussions ongoing as to whether or not that liability should be put on the manufacturer, as we do with products liability, whether it should be put on the owner of the vehicle as we do now. Those questions haven't really been answered yet, and we expect that either legislatures are going to have to specifically address them, or these questions are going to bubble up in the court system, and we'll get court rulings that apply the traditional common law tort system to the HAV landscape. It's really a stay tuned answer.
If I just want to clarify, so 94% of our accidents in our latest data gathering were attributed to human error, so 6% is actually not, so I just wanted to correct that. And liability is one of the most common topics, and I also just want to highlight in our task force that we put together, the policy task force, we work closely with our Department of Insurance to make sure that we stay on top of that discussion.
Thank you. We have a question from Hans. He says, how may HAVs affect and or mesh with public transportation?
You want, please.
We're looking at this technology to improve a variety of mobility options. And so transit and public transportation are also part of this equation. How people access public transportation, how do they get onto the public transportation that they choose. But also we have a very interesting pilot program in Pittsburgh right now where we're putting systems on the buses there, and they will connect to the traffic signals where buses, where they are not running on schedule, where they are late, will be given priority in certain intersections. So they won't be given priority all the time, but when they are not running true to schedule, they will be to get them back on schedule. That will increase reliability, which is directly correlated with ridership and why people choose public transportation. So that's just one of the instances. I don't know, Roger, if you had something to add to that.
Well, I think that's a great specific example of application. I wanted to mention that we have really identified transit and improved transit services across the board as one of the real opportunities to benefit, and to this technology could in certain scenarios, and if policies are right and resources are there, result in a golden age of transit services that we haven't seen in generations. So there's a lot of new ideas that are being brought to bear. They deal with things like ride sharing, connecting to transit hubs, bus rapid transit, which was the system that the Secretary was referring to, new intercity bus connections, perhaps on guided, dedicated lanes along the highways. So this is really a rich area of discussion in which I think people such as Hans have an opportunity to make their voice heard and help shape that future.
This question is from Rich. He says, how soon will PennDOT implement work zone automations, and where do they plan to test this technology?
So one of the first projects we're looking at that was touched on before was an autonomous truck-mounted attenuator, the crash trucks that were mentioned. Assuming we get legislation such as House Bill 1958, if that passes, we've already worked with local partners, local districts who've coordinated with local municipalities and local metropolitan planning organizations to identify some areas in the Commonwealth where it would make sense to try it. Most likely these will be limited access roadways to begin, and that's where our first thoughts on where we would start.
Okay. This is a question about platooning. It's from Sid. He says, can you describe the current plans for long-haul platooning testing and how the public will know, i.e. roadways, test vehicle identity, and labeling?
Platooning is one of the most exciting areas. It can really result in reductions in the cost of goods movement, efficiencies, reduce congestion on our highways, and really help the economy very broadly. The platooning that we're looking at right now, I think it's important to recognize, is not driverless. It is driver assisted. So it is technologies in which drivers are in the cabs and the vehicles that they're operating work closely together, either on a long haul or even in certain circumstances in tighter, more urban quarters. There is the bill that's being considered, HB 1959, calls for any vehicle that is in a platoon to have an insignia that is a clear identifier that they are a platooning vehicle. This is important and a priority for law enforcement because without that insignia to identify that these are connected, technologically connected vehicles, it can be merely a vehicle that is operating unsafely that an officer needs to address. So that issue is at the forefront in terms of the practical approaches to how platooning will proceed.
And I'll just add that that's actually a discussion that's been happening amongst many jurisdictions when it comes to platooning and the marking of vehicles, is to ensure there's some harmonization of markings so that it's consistent from one jurisdiction to another. Similar to the discussions that we're having with the Smart Belt Coalition, the idea that just simply because you cross a border from one state to another state, there shouldn't be a different set of rules. And so as we move forward with platooning, and for that matter, other aspects of automated vehicles, these subject matters of harmonization, if you will, between the various jurisdictions so that there is a consistent approach, whether it's markings or other things, is something that's an important factor as we move forward.
I want to thank everybody who was able to join us today. As you can see from the questions at the end, there's still a lot of questions out there. We want to answer them. For those of you who didn't get a chance to have your questions answered right here today, please continue to email us. Anyone who has emailed us and has not gotten an answer will get an answer from the people that you've met here today. And we will respond directly to you. It's important that we continue this conversation. We do hope that if you can, you will join us at the next PAAV Summit, which will be held in Pittsburgh, again, from April 9th through the 10th. Where we can share with you where we are, and more important, we can hear from you, and we want to know where your questions are, where your concerns are. If it's anything like last year, where we had hundreds of people present and engaged in really informative and exciting discussions, it will be a great summit. So we look forward to seeing you there and to continuing this discussion. Thanks again for joining us.